from the CyberHub bunker and studio, you're tuning in to the CyberHub podcast. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
All right, good morning, gang. How's everyone doing on this lovely Wednesday morning? It's February 10th, 2021. We are live on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. If you're listening on your favorite podcast listening platform, make sure to subscribe and join us live where you can comment live, tune in, see the articles I am reading for today's practitioner brief, which can also be referenced at our website at cyberhubpodcast.com. Today's practitioner brief is supported by our friends over at KnowBe4 and Wistic. You can see them in the show notes and give them a shout out and thank them for supporting our show. So here's the deal. Before we get started, yesterday was Tuesday. In case you missed it, yesterday was Patch Tuesday. Here's the thing about Patch Tuesday, though. The stuff doesn't come out till like 2 in the afternoon some days. So I don't get to cover it on Tuesday, so I do a recap today. So we're going to talk about Patch Tuesday today. I've got another really cool story. We're going to talk about risk, impact, and mitigation. There's a lot of things going on right now, and we want to talk about all those different things. But before we do that, and before I do my ceremonial cup of coffee, if you have not subscribed to the show, please do so right now. If you're watching us on YouTube and LinkedIn, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell to notify you every time we go live. We are live every single Monday through Thursday at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern, I'll be with the Tech Town Square with Eddie, and we're going to be talking about the Florida water treatment plant. I've got special guests tuning into the show. You won't want to miss it, so make sure you tune in as well. We'll be live on my personal LinkedIn page today, James J. Azar, as well as on the CyberHub podcast, Facebook, and YouTube page there as well. So comment, let me know what's going on. Before we continue, though, ceremonial cup of coffee. Yeah, this is my Masters cup. I absolutely love this thing. I got it when I went to the Masters, and it's among other experiences that you get at the Masters. If you're not a golf person, you wouldn't get it, but it's amazing. All right, now that I got my shot of caffeine, let's get right into today's stories, and here we go. Let's start with Microsoft. So Patch Tuesday, Microsoft releases 56 different security patches, 56 different security vulnerabilities, including 11 critical, 6 that are publicly known, 5 that were not, and it continues to address the zero logon bug. Zero logon, in case you forgot, because something called SolarWinds came through and kind of changed the entire narrative at the time, or changed the entire headline story. Zero logon was significant. Now, if I'm Microsoft and I'm the CISO and I'm Brett or Ann Johnson or any of those really smart people there, I'm now looking at zero logon. I'm looking at SolarWinds. I'm looking at people that looked at our source code, and I'm wondering if there's a correlation. Very important to kind of take a look at this. So Microsoft did address 9 critical severity cybersecurity bugs in the February patch, plus an important rated vulnerability that's being actively exploited in the wild. 6 of the security holes, including 1 of the critical bugs, were already publicly disclosed. Overall, they released patches for 56 different CVEs covering Microsoft Windows Component, the .NET Framework, Azure IoT, Azure Kubernetes Service, Microsoft Edge for Android, the Exchange Server, Office and Office Services, as well as web apps, Skype for Business, Lync, and Windows Defender. That is almost the entire Microsoft suite. The actively exploited security bug is in the Windows kernel. It's tracked to CVE 2021-1732, and it's being actively exploited according to Microsoft Advisory. It carries a vulnerability severity rating, a CVSS score of 7.8, making it an important in severity. However, researcher says it deserves attention above some of the critical bugs in terms of patching priority. It exists in the Windows 32K operating system kernel and is an elevation of privilege vulnerability. It would allow a logged on user to execute code of their choosing with higher privileges by running a specially crafted application. If successful, attackers could execute code in the context of the kernel and gain system privileges, essentially giving the attacker free reign to do whatever they want on the compromised machine. Again, the CVSS score doesn't always match the severity of a bug. Obviously here, this is extremely severe, carries great risk. Get this patched immediately. None of the critical bugs were rated more than 8.8. Again, we talked about that. So you can definitely take a look at that and take it there. So let's move on to our next story today. The Adobe patch reader vulnerability, which is being exploited in the wild. So Adobe on Tuesday announced availability for 50 patches for 50 different vulnerabilities across 6 of its products, including a 0-day vulnerability in its reader that has been exploited in the wild. The exploited vulnerabilities tracked the CVE 2021-21017, and it was reported to Adobe anonymously. The software giant said it received a report that the flaw had been exploited in the wild in limited attacks targeting Adobe Reader users on Windows devices. Little information has been shared about the 0-day vulnerability, but nonetheless, Adobe says it's a heap-based buffer overflow and allows for arbitrary code execution. So the last time Adobe patched an actively exploited 0-day vulnerability in Reader was in 2018. Overall, an additional 22 vulnerabilities have been patched in Adobe Acrobat and Reader, including 16 critical. So you want to make sure Adobe Reader and Acrobat are 2 of the most used applications within the business units. You want to get these patched. Make sure automatic updates are on these so that every single machine gets it done. Let's move to Intel. So Intel also on Tuesday announced the release of updates that patches tens of vulnerabilities across many of the company's software and hardware product. According to the updates, described in 19 different advisories, including 4 that cover high severity vulnerabilities. The list of high severity flaws include privilege escalation issue in the Intel solid state drive toolbox and a denial of service flaw in the XMM7360 cell modem that can be exploited by an unauthenticated attacker who has network access. In its graphics drivers, however, Intel patched nearly 2 dozen vulnerabilities, including 5 high-severity bugs that can be exploited by an authenticated attacker. 4 of them allow for privilege escalation, and 1 can be exploited for a DOS attack. So Intel informed customers about the 5 vulnerabilities in the server board, server system, and compute modules baseboard management controller, the BMC products, including 2 high-severity privilege escalation issues. We all use Intel. Listen, I know how hard patching is, right? Patching is difficult. And we saw some people in the SolarWinds issue where they didn't patch and they weren't impacted, and some people who patched and were impacted. We won't name names. So with that being said, though, it's important to patch these because it could lead to greater damage down the road, number one. Number two, prioritize your patches, right? And I don't need to say that. Most of you who listen and watch know to do that, but you want to prioritize your patches and make sure they're all set. Finally, our last story of the day, and one that has nothing to do with Patch Tuesday. Researchers hack over 35 different tech firms in a novel supply chain attack. So a researcher managed to breach 35 major companies' internal systems, including a bunch of names here. You guys can see them on the screen. I won't repeat them. The attack compromised uploading malware to open source repositories, including PyPy, NPM, and RubyGems, which then got distributed downstream automatically into the company's internal applications. Unlike traditional type of squatting attacks that rely on social engineering tactics or the victims misspelling a package name, this particularly supply chain attack is more sophisticated as it needed no action by the victim who automatically received the malicious package. This is because the attack leveraged a unique design flaw of the open source ecosystem called dependency confusion. For his ethical research effort, the researcher has earned over $130,000 in bug bounties. Well done. So this is significant. It has insane amount of risk when it comes to DevOps. And if you're a practitioner and you're not working with your DevOps, with your engineering teams, with your developers, you are missing the ball here. SolarWinds has shown the software supply chain as being extremely weak. We're so focused on our endpoints, on our firewalls, on basic detection, we're forgetting to build a strong base. And now we see this. I've been talking about this for about a year and a half on the CISO Talk podcast. And it's something where we really need to start addressing it. And we got to put it in high gear. If you're having challenges, reach out to the community, get some help. We're here to help. I mean, I know plenty of other CISOs and cybersecurity leaders that are willing to help and kind of identifying how to start building this DevSecOps program. So you definitely want to take a look at that. There's recon and data exfil over DNS here. So the packages had pre-installed scripts that automatically launch a script to exfil identification information from the machine as soon as the build process pulled the package in. Knowing that the scripts would be making connections from corporate networks, Burson decided to use DNS to exfiltrate the data to bypass detection. Knowing that most of the possible targets would be deep inside well-protected corporate networks, I considered that DNS exfiltration was the way to go according to the blog post, and you can obviously see how he did that there. Well done. I mean, this is why security researchers and white hat hackers are critical to our ecosystem, and we gotta continue to build those programs up and support them in their work so that we're able to get this information before a bad guy gets it and attacks our organization with it. That's it for our practitioner brief this morning, folks. We'll be back tomorrow to wrap up this week and get everything set up. Today on the CISO Talk podcast, I'll be hosting Renata Friedlich, the head of global cyber operations over at PayPal, for a really, really fun conversation, an insight into what the term prevention is all about. So you'll want to tune into that. If you haven't subscribed to the CISO Talk podcast, please make sure to do so. That podcast will be live here in the next few hours, also on our YouTube channel. So make sure to tune in. Until next time, folks, thanks so much for watching. Thanks so much for tuning in. Stay healthy and stay cyber safe.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.